Buonasera.
Sì, buon pomeriggio a tutti, un po' di silenzio per favore che iniziamo con la conferenza stampa. Bene, buon pomeriggio a tutti, io sono segretario della stampa estera, volevo ringraziare all'Ordine di Malta per aver scelto la nostra sede per parlare del tema, sulla tematica, sulla priorità del governo dell'Ordine di Malta, e vorrei anche dare il benvenuto ai relatori di oggi come sono Albrecht Boeselager, Grand Cancelliere dell'Ordine di Malta, e Mauro Casanghini, direttore del Ok, io vi auguro un buon lavoro e grazie a tutti per aver venuto alla nostra sede.
Grazie mille. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here with us today. I'm Eugenio Roldi, Director of Communication of the Sovereign Order of Malta. The purpose of this conference is to explain the priorities of the government of the Order of Malta after recent events and to answer to your questions. This press conference will last 1 hour and 15 minutes, and it will begin with a press statement by Albrecht Boeselager in the name of our government, and then we will try to answer as many questions as possible. In the next weeks, we are available to organize individual interviews with the members of the government of the Order of Malta, should you wish so. Now I will introduce our speakers today, the Grand Chancellor of the Sovereign Order of Malta, Albrecht Boeselager, the Grand Hospitaller Dominique de la Rochefoucauld-Montbel, on my left, and then the receiver of the Common Treasure, Janos Esterhazy de Galanta. So now we start with the statement of the Grand Chancellor.
Good afternoon. Many thanks for taking your time to be with us today. Great thanks to Mr. Piller for allowing us to have this press conference here. I speak to you as Grand Chancellor of the Sovereign Order of Malta on behalf of the entire government of the Order, an institution with 900 years of history of service to the sick and the poor. It is not that often that we have the opportunity to address such a large and distinguished group of media representatives. That is why I would like to remind you that as we speak, our 100,000 volunteers and staff are working in the most difficult regions in the world, focused on the mission of the Order. This is only possible because of the great commitment and vocation for the aims of the Order. I would like to outline 6 important points that define the work of our government now. First, the Order has a government in place that is restoring leadership in line with the constitution of the Order. The Sovereign Order of Malta is unique in the world, being at the same time a Catholic lay order, a sovereign entity, and a humanitarian institution. But as recent weeks have shown, we are, however, not immune when it comes to having a crisis in our government. We are grateful for the Grand Master that he accepted the proposal to resign, and this has put the elected government of the Order back in a position where it can stand up to its constitutional responsibilities and govern the affairs of the Order. We are now working to reassure our members and to restore normality in the way we function. Second, the Order reaffirms its loyalty to the Holy Father. Let me reassure our members and everybody that the government of the Order is and will remain at the service of the Holy Father. Our devotion to the teachings of the Church is irrevocable and beyond question. What the order has experienced was a government crisis brought about by an act illegal under the Constitution. We are grateful for the Holy Father to have provided guidance that led to a swift solution. We regret allegations of conflict of interest against the members of the Commission set up by the Holy Father. They are baseless and unfounded. We look forward to cooperating with the special delegate the Pope will appoint. Thirdly, the humanitarian and socio-medical work is to remain at all times at the center of the government's activity. As the current crisis in the Middle East and the Mediterranean is showing us every day, our work has never been more relevant and needed. We will not allow the recent distractions in the government of the order to jeopardize our humanitarian and socio-medical work. As we speak, the order is running 20 hospitals, more than 1,000 medical facilities worldwide, soup kitchens, camps for refugees and migrants, and is helping the elderly, the disabled, and the excluded. Our decentralized structure all over the world ensured that the activities were at all times fully implemented and safeguarded. Fourth, we will continue to strengthen our diplomatic engagements. The sovereignty and diplomatic network play a pivotal role in the order's ability to serve people in need and is an asset for the Catholic Church. The government of the order will remain focused on the cooperation with the UN and its sub-organizations, especially the High Commissioner for Refugees, the UN mission in Libya, the Mediterranean Naval Mission Sophia, and, for instance, the International Organization for Migration, IOM. One of our recent priorities as part of our engagement as a sovereign entity has been and is to encourage dialogue amongst Libyan parliament and representatives of Libyan civil society. This work is possible thanks to the order's sovereignty. Fifth, we will continue addressing the needs of refugees and migrants and scale up projects in the most needy geographical areas. The priority for the Order of Malta is to continue unabated its manifold humanitarian projects in 120 countries worldwide. The needs of migrants and refugees have never been greater. We are providing help in the countries of origin, transit, and arrival to ease their integration. We are currently assessing the evolving situation in Syria and are ready for local engagement at the side of the needy people the moment it will become possible. Six, we firmly condemn discriminatory policies and call for a strong reaffirmation of humanitarian laws. We are alarmed and concerned by the proliferation of discriminatory positions towards immigrants, not last based on their national origin. History has already provided us with plenty of examples showing the dramatic and monstrous consequences of policies based on origin and race. Likewise, we are appalled by the disregard for the humanitarian laws encoded in the Geneva Conventions ratified by the Family of Nations. Not only are the norms being increasingly ignored by state and non-state actors, but they are being publicly challenged and disputed. As an observer to the UN and other multilateral entities, we will continue to raise our voice in this context. Thank you.
Philip Pulel. Microfono.
Hi, Phil Pulella from Reuters. Well, the elephant in the room, even though it's not here, is obviously Cardinal Burke. So what I'd like to ask you is this. In your statement of December 23rd, describing the events, you're saying that in your meeting with the Grand Master and Cardinal Burke, indicating that their wishes were in accordance with the wishes of the Holy See. That assertion on their part was denied later on in the letter by Cardinal Parolin. So I'd like to ask you two things. One is, do you think, given all of this that happened, Cardinal Burke's position in the Knights of Malta still tenable? Or is this just going to be an obstacle to you, not you personally, the Knights moving on? And then I think that you spoke a little bit about sovereignty, but clearly there are a lot of people, including perhaps some in this room, who would not agree with you that sovereignty was not violated. There are people who say that sovereignty was violated, even though the Pope says in his letter that you handle your relations in the sovereignty and my representative to you will look after the religious side, which seems that there is no sovereignty problem, is there? But the first one in particular.
I think we cannot foresee, and we will not make comments on the role of Cardinal Burke in the future. That is left to the decision of the Holy Father. What we can say, and what you know, is that the Holy Father has written to the order a letter indicating that he will name a special delegate who will be his only spokesman to the order for the time of his tenure of office. I think the Vatican took care of the crisis, or started to take care of the crisis, when it became aware of the fact that the wish of the Holy Father was invoked when I was asked to resign. And that's the reason the Holy Father and the Vatican stepped in. So it had nothing to do with our sovereignty. And if you read the letters of the Holy Father carefully, it's especially mentioned that it will not interfere with our relations with the states. And the Holy Father and the Vatican realizes very well that our sovereign functions is at the service of the Church.
Posso parlare italiano, vero? O no? Meglio...
Sì, sì.
Ok.
Se parla piano, sì.
Sì. Devo fare la premessa che non sono molto esperta dell'Ordine di Malta, e per quello questa storia mi ha fatto capire alcune cose, però non capisco, e questo magari è la continuazione della domanda del collega, di sovranità, di ruolo di questo delegato papale, se già c'è stato nella storia dell'ordine un delegato che dovrebbe svolgere questo ruolo di guida, e quando saranno le elezioni, perché il capo dell'ordine è il Gran Maestro, e allora dovrebbe svolgersi, come non so, al Vaticano appena non c'è Papa c'è il conclave. Da voi come corrispondono queste due cose, delegato papale, interteam di cancelliere e le elezioni? Sì, grazie.
Regarding the delegate, I repeat that the Holy Father indicated in his letter that the task of the delegate will concentrate on the religious side of the order, and especially on the role of the professed members of the order. And to the second part of your question, the constitution of the order foresees that new elections have to take place not later than 3 months after the death or resignation of a Grand Master. So it will probably be in the second half of April, but the date has not yet been decided.
Christopher Lamb from The Tablet. I want to ask about the Pope's role in this and what his intention was, you think, by appointing the delegate in relation to the reform of the order. Did he see a need to reform the order before this crisis, or did he see the need to reform the order after this crisis? And following on from that, on the Sovereign Council of the Order is an individual, Duncan Galley, who has been publicly accused of failing to report sexual abuse in a scandal in the UK. Will he remain on the Sovereign Council?
I have not met the Holy Father since, so I cannot tell you more than I told you about the intentions of the Holy Father. And I don't know the report given to the Holy Father by the Commission, so I cannot comment on this. We will see all this when this delegate will be appointed and get in contact with us. Referring to Frau Duncan Galley, I think it's known that the perpetrator in question has been convicted and is serving or has served a sentence in jail. I don't know whether he's still in jail. He was serving also in the sacristy of the order, but fortunately no offenses took place in the sacristy of the order. In-depth inquiry has been carried out by the order, which came to the result that there was a certain negligence on the side of those of the order responsible for the sacristy. But the Grand Master, having seen the report, decided that the negligence would not be considered as such grave that it should have consequences for the people concerned.
Okay, so Francis, Nicole.
Thank you, Frank. Sure. Frank Rocco, Wall Street Journal. Your Excellency, you spoke of a crisis. What was at stake? Was it merely a few individual officials who disagreed about governance, or was this a struggle in any way for the soul or the mission of the order? Thank you.
It was less about person. It was more the regard to the constitution and code of the order. The steps taken were a breach of the constitution and the code of the order, and the observance of the constitution and code of the order were at stake.
Nicole Winfield from Associated Press. I'd like to ask you, we've all watched this unfold from the outside, seeing the flurry of statements going back and forth. I'd like to hear, from your point of view, why do you think you were removed? I mean, we've been told that this condom scandal was a pretext, that it had been resolved years ago. So what really led to this? If you could tell us what you think was really going on. And then a second question, if I may, about the special delegate. In the letter of the Pope to the Council, he speaks about the need to change certain aspects of the Constitution itself. So this delegate will also be looking to the founding principles of the order. I'd like you to tell us what needs to be reformed. What is it about the professed knights that needs to be relooked at? What does the government hope might be the result of this form? What needs to be reformed?
As I said before, the Holy Father has not specified his wishes and ideas more than explained in the letter. I think it's no secret that the number of the professed in the order is not very high. We have about 55 professed knights. In comparison to a total membership of 13,500, it's a very low figure. And probably one of the aspects of the reform will be what can be done to attract more people to follow a vocation as a professed knight. The professed are the core of the order. Through their vows, they commit their lives to the mission of the order, and I think this group has to be strengthened.
Personal question. How did you see? Why did they want you out?
Part of it is a mystery to me. Part of it is the fact that there was an increasing tension and disagreement between the elected government of the order, not only me, also my colleagues sitting here and the others, and people brought in by the Grand Master without regard to the Constitution in positions which are not constitutional.
Signor von Boeselager, Giuseppe Rusconi, Inside the Vatican. Senta, da profano, io sono un profano in materia, ma si sente dire dall'interno dei Cavalieri di Malta, e non solo dai Cavalieri di Malta italiani, che de facto si è trattato di un Anschluss, lei capisce benissimo che cosa significa, un Anschluss vaticano dell'Ordine di Malta. Ma dietro questo chiamato Anschluss non ci sono anche importanti questioni finanziarie. Si dice, per esempio, si parla di un'eredità contesa di 118 milioni di franchi svizzeri, parla da parte di cavalieri italiani dell'intenzione del nuovo governo di trasferire i beni immobili dei Cavalieri di Malta in Italia, da via dei condotti in avanti, allo IOR, in cui siede il fratello di lei, signor von Boeselager. Ecco, questa è la prima domanda. La seconda domanda è questa. Lei nel suo intervento, mi sembra, abbia fatto un attacco durissimo, senza citarlo, contro il nuovo Presidente degli Stati Uniti e anche contro il governo ungherese. Ma mi chiedo, ma l'Ordine di Malta ha mai fatto attacchi di questo genere contro i governi che propugnano l'aborto, che propugnano l'eutanasia, che propugnano i matrimoni gay, eccetera? Grazie.
That's quite a couple of questions. I hope I will.
Even more.
I hope I will remember them all. If I miss something, please remind me. The Treasurer will answer to the financial questions. I think the intention of the Vatican is the contrary of an Anschluss. The intention of the Holy Father is to do everything to strengthen us to carry out our mission in the future. It's not the intention of the Holy Father to weaken us. That's my deep conviction. As I said in my statement, there have been many allegations regarding the members of the commission appointed by the Holy Father creating assumptions of relations between different people. The nomination of my brother was before the crisis arose. It was even published before the crisis, so it has nothing to do with the crisis. My brother does know none of the members of the Commission. And let me say one thing. I'm in the order since 40 years. I'm in the government of the order since almost 30 years. I think there's almost nobody in a leading position in the order I don't know or who wouldn't know me. And I'm proud to say, with almost all of them, I am in very good relations. So to claim that the people of the Commission know me or have special contacts with me, it would be hardly to find anybody else.
Joshua McElwee with the National Catholic Reporter. I wanted to ask, I know you had said that you asked before about Cardinal Burke.
Finance.
Finance.
No, c'è ancora Presidente degli Stati Uniti.
So,
Sì, ma no, questo non c'entra niente.
No, ma
Sì.
vorrei sapere se...
I don't attack people. I made a statement of principle. I think I want to reaffirm this. There are many places, many countries, many institutions which are violating humanitarian principles. So I don't single out anyone. And it's a statement of principle of the Order of Malta. And especially, I want to reaffirm, I don't attack the Hungarian government. I think we don't have the time to discuss this in details. There are special sensitivities, special historical reasons in Hungary which have to be taken into regard. But it's our principle to underline that we will not accept that humanitarian principles are broken in regard to treatment of refugees and migrants.
Finance.
I'm not sure whether I quite understood your question, but assuming that there may be other questions related to finances and donations and the like, I would like to answer them, and then maybe you have follow-up questions on that. Let me start with something of a general remark. I mean, it's obvious that for the Order of Malta to be able to fulfill its mission with regard to the serving of the poor, it depends largely on the support of literally thousands of people around the world. And the support is typically done in two ways. One, in the volunteer work of people on the ground dealing with our masters, as we call them, the poor and the sick, but also, obviously, by providing monetary donations. From the very beginning of the order could not have operated without donations. That's obvious. Being very conscious that when it comes to donations, principles have to be obeyed. Obviously, the Order of Malta has also principles that everyone has to adhere to. The first obvious principle is the rule of law. With any donation coming our way, we have to obey the rule of law. But there are other requirements above and beyond that, which we strictly adhere to. For instance, there are very rigid selection criteria for donations that we apply. One of it being that there has to be, it has to be clear that there cannot be any conflict of interest within the donation scenario between the order, the donor, and members of the order. The next principle is that for every donation that we receive, there is a clear and transparent allocation to a purpose of the order. We will never accept a donation for the sake of a donation, but it has to be allocated to a purpose of the order. And then lastly, I want to emphasize that, and I'm sure you appreciate that, there is always a special relationship between donors and the Order of Malta. Donors being individuals or legal entities. Because it is clear that donors, when they come to the order, typically initiated because they know works of the order, or they know members of the order, or people working for the order. So there is absolutely no doubt that in any donation that we receive, there's some connection or previous connection to either works of the order or people of the order in a very decentralized manner. We receive donations from all parts of the world and in all parts of the world in which we operate. And it is by no means a centralized procedure. It is a mixture of decentralized and centralized scenario. So I think it's important to know that, because it characterizes the environment in which donations are given and received and processed and applied and used by the order. I don't know whether you have any more specific questions, but I'm ready to ask them.
I wanted to ask again, I'm sorry, I wanted to return to Cardinal Burke. And I know you said you couldn't speak about his role going forward, but I wanted to ask about the role he's played in the past. What kind of role was he playing in the governance of the order? And as someone who you said has been with the governance for 30 years, was the role he was playing in the same remit as past spiritual patrons, or was it different in some way?
The Cardinal Patronus is the envoy of the Pope to the order. So he is on the side of the Vatican and not on the side of the order. He is the envoy of the Pope, but he is not part of the government of the order, with a special role of looking after the spirituality of the order and helping the prelate of the order in promoting the spirituality. And of course there have been differences between the different cardinals, because they had different personalities, they had different focuses, different relations with the order, as there are different popes or different people. So it's normal that their role is, or how they carry out the role, it's different.
Okay. Hello.
Can we follow up? What was Burke doing? What was his role? How would you characterize it?
I think you know Cardinal Burke. His special attention was on adherence to church teachings.
Tom Kington from the Times. Hello. You said earlier that the reason for the row in the first place was due partly to increasing tension between the elected government and the people brought in by the Grand Master without any regard to the Constitution. So it sounds like just a sort of a turf war, a sort of power struggle, and therefore I imagine that the condom accusation was an invented pretext. Do you know who dreamt that up? Was it the former Grand Master himself? Thanks.
All I can say is that he paid a special attention to it. I think I can frankly say it has been proven in the meantime that, or let me say, firstly, the projects where this distribution was carried out were discovered by an internal audit carried out by Malteser International, and not from outside. And then they were taken, the consequences were taken immediately. Malteser International has a board of 9 members, The role of the Grand Hospitaller regarding Malteser International is the same as for the other works of the order. He has a role of supervision, but he has not an operative role, neither in Malteser International nor in the other works of the order. The projects were not known by the Director General and Board of Malteser International until they were found out by the audit. You have to know how this organization functions. Only the big framework projects are decided upon in the center. The specific smaller projects or implementation is in the competence of the country or regional coordinators. Malteser International has already put a policy in place in the early or mid-2000s that they would not carry out projects with the contribution of condoms. So the contracting these projects were a breach of the policy committed by the country coordinator. He was called in for disciplinary reason, and he left the organization before. So that's what I can say in this protest. So I think it has been proven, and as far as I know, that was also the result of the Vatican Commission, that the allegations in this case against me are groundless.
Franca Giansoldati, Il Messaggero. Io le volevo chiedere se per favore ci spiega perché il Papa nella lettera che ha scritto ai membri del Consiglio Supremo a un certo punto utilizza un termine preciso e carico di significato, cioè che c'è bisogno di portare moralizzazione all'interno dei cavalieri professi. Le volevo chiedere perché la moralizzazione. Moralizzazione. Prima cosa. Seconda cosa, quando le fu chiesto per ben 2 volte di dimettersi, lei in qualche modo era tenuto all'obbedienza al Gran Maestro. Perché non si è dimesso? E poi che cosa ha provato personalmente? Ci può descrivere anche come è avvenuto quel momento, che immagino che per lei sia stato anche drammatico?
I must admit I don't remember this phrase of moralization. I think it's not. Spiritual renewal. Something else. I think spiritual renewal is something which every Christian is in need of. So. And the second.
What you felt.
Okay. Yeah. The promise of obedience of the members of the second class and the vow of obedience of the members of the first class is in the frame of the Constitution and Code of the Order. So in the context of obedience, nothing can be asked which is not in the frame of the Constitution and the Code of the Order. First. And second, it was based on the assumption that the Holy See had asked for my resignation. Both was not the case, so therefore I did not feel to be committed by my promise of obedience to follow the request. And that's obviously the result also of the Vatican inquiry.
Quindi Burke e Festing hanno mentito?
I will not comment on this.
Mr. van Boeselager, I'm Delia Gallagher from CNN. one of the interesting things about this, I think, is that in order to reinstate you, the Pope had to oust the Grand Master. He could have said to him, I want him reinstated. He convinced him to resign. He probably would have reinstated you. Therefore, there was clearly a wish on the part, I would think, of the Vatican and also of some members of the Sovereign Council that the Grand Master leave. If that is the case, and if that was the case in the months leading up to this, let's say, because of, as you mentioned, various acts against the Constitution, why is there, and why was it not then put into place, a kind of internal procedure within your own Sovereign Council to oust the Grand Master? Or is that not possible and therefore required the intervention of the Holy Father?
Firstly, I wish to emphasize, I think that, in my view, the concentration in many of the media on the question of sovereignty, partly provoked by the letters put out by our government and the Grand Master before, is not the base. The base is that the order needs to work in a trustful relation with the Holy Father and the Holy See. And without this trustful relation, the order cannot function. So the concern of the Holy Father was to re-establish a trustful relation between the order and the Holy See. And I think it's not right to say that the Grand Master was ousted. He was asked. I suppose I was not, nobody of us was present, but in a pastoral way, to consider resignation. And the Grand Master graciously accepted this, offered his resignation to the Sovereign Council, and the Sovereign Council accepted the resignation. To your next question, in fact, the provisions in the Constitution and Code of the Order to remove a Grand Master from his office are very restrict, and it would have been impossible in this situation.
Was it desired? Was it desired before the intervention of the Vatican?
There was no consideration in this regard, because we knew it was not. We did not expect this crisis to escalate.
One question, Jan Benz from LifeSide News. The question is the distribution of contraceptives, has that stopped completely? And are you taking steps to avoid that in the future? And then the follow-up question for that would be, are you also contrite for your personal involvement in it? They say that you have said that your conscience is clear. So could you just reiterate that?
I will answer the last part of the question, and the Grand Hospital the first part of the question. I said my conscience is clear in regard of the measures and procedures we have taken after we got to know about the problem. It was not related to the distribution of condoms as such. I have always underlined that I feel bound to the teachings of the Church. And if you ask my friends how they would see my position in the Church, they would rather see me on the conservative side and not on the liberal side. So when we knew about these projects, except one, all the projects were stopped immediately. The second, it was more problematic to stop, and we involved an ethical working group under the leadership of a bishop, Bishop Stenger, to give us advice how to deal with this. So when I said my conscience is clear, this relates to the procedure. Before, I had it has not been a question of conscience because I didn't know about it. And I leave the second part of the question to the Grand Hospitaller because I'm no more in charge of this point.
Well, hello everybody. I'm a bit impressed because usually I'm not speaking like this. I'm more on the field. And when I have a crowd like that in front of me, it's either that I'm giving sweets or they're coming for a meal. Yeah, so when I was elected to this position after Albrecht, I was warned a few months later that there had been these problems, which you have mentioned. All the cases were stopped, the programs were stopped. There was only one which continued. It was still in Miramar, in an area which is very difficult. And I must say the purpose that had been put up at that time, before I came into position, it was to protect slaves' sexual assault or sexual slavery. This program has been stopped, and since we have been working with inquiries, we have been working, as the Grand Master asked, an inquiry. When the results of the inquiry came, everything was put into normal conditions, and it was reminded to all our entities. Now you must know that we are in decentralized organization. We have nearly 80 entities which are territorial entities or national entities. And they drive our different programs. And I'm here more to coordinate and go on this field to see how they run. We've just launched lately with the NCBC, which is in Philadelphia, guiding principles on all what is care on reproductive health programs. So we're closely working with the teaching of the Church. It's not very easy. You know, here we're lucky, you know, we're in Rome and we have a coffee, we have a pizza. Don't forget that 2 hours from here, people are living under tents. I was there 3 days ago in the snow. It's -7, -6. 180 people are sleeping in one tent, and they can see their village just above them, and they can't go. That's our reality. And so principles have to be followed. I totally agree. To adapt them, it's very difficult, and you all know it's difficult. In Catholic institutions, in Muslim institutions, I was in charge for 5 years of the maternity of Bethlehem. 10 babies a day. Wonderful place. Christians serving and Muslim mummies giving birth. A wonderful place. So, time to time, we are challenged to these questions. And so we have to, every time, be very careful and try and find a solution which is within the teaching of the Church. And that is not easy. That is not easy.
Very good. Very good.
My name is Philip Willan. I'm from the British Press. You mentioned that the problem of the distribution of condoms emerged from an internal audit, but there have also been published reports that a dossier was delivered to Cardinal Burke containing these allegations. I wonder if there's any truth to that, a dossier that came from outside, and whether that dossier might have been provided by the Lepanto Institute, which has very detailed allegations of the Order of Malta's collaboration in United Nations projects, not just in Myanmar. So I wonder if you would care to comment on the role of this particular institute and whether it had a role or whether it sort of picked up the allegations at a later stage, because they seem to have a mission to control the orthodoxy of Catholic individuals and organizations. Thank you.
May I answer on that question? As I told you, we had an indoor investigation, and it was under the control of the Grand Master, who had asked for it. I don't know. I can assure you that surely in some of the elements they put in to do this report and this inquiry, they asked Lepanto surely to collect some information. I think this institute collects a lot of information for its own reasons, but we had this indoor report, and the report was delivered last January, so a year ago. Well, there's no comment. I don't know exactly how they work because they didn't even ask me to work with them. Maybe because I was away with my malade and my poor guys.
Sono Antonio Pelaggio da televisione spagnola. Vorrei ma prima se c'è un'aria...
Non si sente, non si sente.
Sì. Ripeto, sono Antonio Pelaggio da televisione. Vorrei farle un paio di domande. Prima, se nella storia centenaria dell'ordine c'è stato un precedente di dimissioni o questa è la prima come quella di Papa Benedetto? E poi, seconda cosa, se lei considera che questa è la più grave crisi nei rapporti tra la Santa Sede e l'Ordine di Malta. Non parlo di crisi militari, politiche, no, tra la Santa Sede e l'Ordine di Malta.
I'm not a historian, so I can't tell you details, but I was told that there have been resignations of Grand Masters before, but I think you have to ask historians to get details. I would describe it as such. Yes, there has been a crisis, but in the crisis, you see how strong relations are. And I think this crisis has reaffirmed that the relations between the Order and the Holy See are good, and I'm convinced they will improve further.
Now Catholic. I just wondered if I ask Mr. Boeselager, what nature what's the nature of the Caritas Provi Grad and this 120 million euro trust, which say is at the center of this whole discussion?
No.
Could you tell us what your involvement is in this trust and what's happened to an alleged lawsuit by the Order against trust? And secondly, could you tell us, the Pope has asked that Freemasonry be cleared out of the Order. Could you say what's being done about this and what will be done about it?
I think the last question is easy to answer, and then I will turn over again to the treasurer. The Pope has not asked the Order to clear of Freemasons. It's a non-rumor which is not true. The Pope has asked that members of the Order who belong to organizations he didn't name Freemasonry, which are mundane or not in concordance with the Catholic Church, should leave these organizations. So he didn't tell that these members should leave the Order. He asked that members who are members of organizations who are not in total concordance with the Church should leave these organizations. We have asked for indications because these people don't raise their fingers and say what they are. So what I can tell you is that in the regulations for membership in the Order, it is compulsory that candidates for admission make an expressive statement in their application form that they do not belong to organizations hostile to the Church and Freemasons. And every candidate needs a nihil obstat of his local ordinary before he gets admitted to the order. So that's what we can do. If people are hiding and concealing such membership, it's very difficult for us to find out. But that's what I can confirm. And regarding this trust, I leave the answer to Count Esterhazy.
I'm not quite sure whether I heard the name of the trust quite well because the mic wasn't working too well, but if you're referring to a trust which was reported upon in the press, I can say, or we can say, that there is no connection between the Order of Malta and the trust, and to the extent that this trust has a connection to the donor or the potential donor, we feel that it's in the domain of the donor, and it is not up to us to comment on it in any way, specifically because what I mentioned to you earlier is what we call the special relationship in any donation with the donor and the Order of Malta, which we simply have to respect.
Angela Ambrogetti, ACI Stampa, IWTN, e volevo sapere se il signor Boeselager ha pensato che con il suo gesto poi si sarebbe arrivati a un delegato pontificio e che cosa vi aspettate, cioè se questa serie di azioni avrebbero portato a una cosa come un delegato pontificio e a un gruppo, e poi che cosa vi aspettate da questo delegato pontificio. E poi un'altra cosa, ho sentito che c'è stato un ricorso alla rota romana, non so se l'ha fatto lei o qualcun altro, se lo ha fatto lei, se ci può spiegare perché.
I don't know anything about the repeal to the Roman Rota, so I have heard nothing about it. And
the special delegate.
Yeah, I can only repeat what I have already said. After having received the report of the Commission, the Holy Father decided to name a papal delegate with a special focus I already explained, so I can't say more to it. I don't know.
Nicolas Senez, La Croix. In these 2 months of crisis, did you see a decrease of donation, or do you fear such a decrease?
Yeah.
As you're La Croix and I being French, it'll be easier, but I'll say it in English. Of course, this has been troublesome for our donors, and you know, in some of our national entities, we have quite an important fold of donors, which can provide quite a lot of money for our works. So as it's for our works, of course, when this has an effect, those who have the profit of this generosity don't get it, so it's usually the poor. There has been questions. And I was lately in France, and so I went to see our marketing director and our fundraisers office, and I said, what's been the impact? Let's talk about it. There has been. And when somebody writes a letter saying, well, I'm shocked by what's happening, it's not very easy for a donor to write that, so he's really, really cross, and so we have to take this into account. What was shocking, and it was shocking for me too, as people decided maybe not to help us anymore because they thought that we were fighting against the Pope, which is not true. I can tell you, it was not true. And personally, and my friends who are here, no, never. And so now, as it was said a few minutes ago, it's a question of trust. So now we have to restore this trust, and we have to restore this trust to all those who trust us in what we do. And we're considered as an international entity which is trustworthy. So trust not only to our small donors, which are numerous, hundreds of thousands of people, but also to all the institutions which we work with, which can be corporation companies, it can be development agencies of the UN, it can be state corporation organizations, etc., etc. So today our job is to show the work is still on, and we have to get the trust back that unfortunately we have maybe lost a bit.
But as far as we see so far, the reduction of donations is not significant.
What does not significant mean?
I would say that the example of France, where we count in millions the money coming in, it's 10, 20,000, maybe 30,000 euros. Less. On the last launch of Appeal, which concerns 300,000 people. I'm very open on that.
Yes, Catherine Marciano, AFP News Agency. You said that the Pope asked in a very pastoral way to the Grand Master to resign. Some reports, or one report, said that the Grand Master was obliged was asked by the Pope to write a statement saying he was influenced by Cardinal Burke. Do you have knowledge of this specific letter of resignation, and can you confirm if this was included in this letter? Thank you.
I have not seen the letter of resignation, so I can confirm nothing, and I think nobody of us has been present at the meeting of the Holy Father with our Grand Master.
We only have 10 minutes left, so we need to be as brief as possible.
Buongiorno, Maria Antonietta Calabrò per Huffington Post. Volevo chiedere una cosa. C'è una questione di tempi, cioè nel senso che quando sarà convocato il Consiglio Compito di Stato per eleggere il nuovo Gran Maestro, perché in base alle Costituzioni è tra i 15 giorni e i 3 mesi dal momento dal fatto che non c'è più un Gran Maestro. Quindi la prima domanda è se sappiamo quando verrà convocato, se voi lo potete dire, e questo come coincide con la nomina del delegato speciale del Papa, cioè con l'azione, con il lavoro del delegato speciale del Papa. 3 mesi basteranno per cambiare la Costituzione o no?
Those are things which have to be discussed. So the order has to convene, the technical term is the Council Complete of State, at least 3 months after the vacancy. The Council Complete of State can decide either to elect a Grand Master or to elect for 1 year a lieutenant of the Grand Master with the same position as a Grand Master. And all this will be decided in future. And as I said before, the exact dates have not yet been fixed.
How this relates with the special delegate? How this relates with the work of the special delegate?
How it relates, we have to see. we have to see.
We need the microphone.
Yeah. Have to for
Non funziona. I think it's a matter of a position where.
Specific question. You have diplomatic relations with many countries, 100, and I heard that you have been in a good way to establish this kind of relations also with Germany. And this process was somehow interrupted by the.
I'm very confident that the discussion about this matter will be taken up very quickly again.
Il CNN, lady there.
Hi, is this okay? Good.
Yes.
I'm still trying to get my head around what happened inside Via Condotti. I mean, it seems that the Grand Master was on a suicide mission. I mean, did he really think that he would win a battle of wills with the Pope? And what do you think Cardinal Burke's role in egging him on, is what we hear, to continue with these statements which just challenge the authority of the Pope? And secondly, you said recently that the papal delegate will be the only link between the order and the Vatican. If that is the case, then what is left for Cardinal Burke to do?
Please ask this question to the Holy Father. Really, you know,
What about the first part? I mean, do you really think that, I mean, did Festing really thought that he would win a battle of wills with the Pope? And do you think that the Grand Master, the ex-Grand Master, really thought that he could win a very public battle of wills with the Pope? And I mean, it was almost Nixonian. I mean, it's just really...
I was not present during these weeks in the Grand Magistry. My assumption is that the former Grand Master was ill-advised by whomsoever.
By whom?
Soever.
No, wait a minute, we have got
5 minutes left.
I'll be brief. I too want to go back to the question of sovereignty. The Grand Hospitaller said that there was never, that you were not fighting against the Pope. However, reading those statements, whether ill-advised or not, that was the public position of the order. And it was clear that those public statements were going up. It was a showdown. You were saying, we will not cooperate. This is an illegitimate investigation. We're not participating. So I'd like to ask you how, if you would acknowledge that there was a very public fight against the Pope, at least on the website, if not the sentiments of the order. And also, on the question of sovereignty, because it is so dear to the order, I have to ask how it was received when there's a letter from Cardinal Parolin, the Prime Minister of a separate sovereign entity, informing you, the government of the Sovereign Order of Malta, that your Grand Master has submitted his resignation, not to you, as your constitution calls for, but to the Pope, that all of his actions for the previous month were null and void. Again, a foreign country telling you that your government's actions were null and void, that a foreign sovereign has appointed a delegate to help you govern, to rewrite your constitutions. I cannot imagine that sat very well with you.
Let me answer to this. I think the letter of Cardinal Parolin could have been misunderstood, and that was the reason why the Pope wrote another letter. And you have to understand that they had to act in a hurry. And Cardinal Parolin has many duties. He had to leave for Africa. And I think I only can say that Cardinal Parolin was of enormous help in resolving our problems. Again, I think you have to distinguish between the religious side of the order and the sovereign side of the order. It's as two sides of the coin. It's very much interlinked. So one side, of course, has consequences for the other side, but the Pope made it very clear that his focus will be the religious side of the order. And I can also say that we will soon have invite all the ambassadors accredited to the order to talk with them and to explain to them this position. And also, I think the letters of Cardinal Parolin and the Pope can have to be read as their interpretation of the legal acts. The order took it on itself to act according to its constitution.
No, I'm sorry, it's 5:15. I think that the Grand Chancellor has something to add at the end, and then we will close this press conference.
Yeah. Please allow me to make a final remark, because that's really close to our hearts. This crisis will be a marginal event in history. What is more at stake is the crisis we are facing in the world, and the misery and the plead of the millions of people homeless, migrating and fleeing, drowning in the Mediterranean, tortured on their way. Please don't forget to report about these cases and fight the arrogant ignorance regarding these crises and the indifference. We read that it is considered in one case to place refugees on an island which is regularly underwater. So that's what is at stake more than our situation. Thank you.
As I said, we are ready to organize individual interviews in the next weeks, so just get in contact with us. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.